Look at this dude.
Anyway, so this is the second interviews of real estate with building search series, and we have another guest from the same friends group, the friends group me and Ali with. So this is Matthew, and you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, I am Matthew. I currently live in North York, and as John has introduced me, I am one of his friends.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, yeah, another guy from North York. It will be kind of redundant to talk about North York again, but you know, so take a few moments and introduce yourself about your school and majors and jobs and I don't know relationship status and stuff. Well, we're not.
All right. Well, that's quite a handful, but so I have an honors bachelor's in construction management, and I am currently working professionally as a project manager for a prefabrication company. I currently do have a girlfriend, so my relationship status, I suppose, would be taken. And yeah, I am still currently living at home with my parents. That's one more detail that might be relevant.
Yeah. So, yeah, just it's the same questions that I have asked Ali, and I think it's kind of important to establish this kind of background. And the funny thing is, I've made two of my friends expose their background, and I don't even have a video about my own background. This is so funny now I think about it. But anyway. The reason why is, as I stated in a previous interview, is that because real estate is highly personal. Everyone's different. Every house is different, and depends on is I like to think about real estate transaction more of a relationship match. So you and your dream house, or your to matching in a relationship in under conditions where you're mostly satisfied, and the house can provide you the values that you're seeking. So that's the reason why we're setting up the backgrounds, because everyone's different, and I think in a sense that with you currently living at home, and now I understand everyone, because most people I talk to that around our age, I would say majority of them are living at home. So the I understand the advantage of living at home is to save money. And under what condition would you think will be a great time for you to move out? Like what's the condition that satisfy the chances for you to move out?
Well, first of all, it comes down to affordability, right? Like you mentioned, saving money, and it all comes down to obviously, eventually, you need to move out of your parents' homes. I don't think that's something many people contest, but delaying that definitely has a great deal to do with, the degree of affordability. If you have a partner, like in my case, it could also have to do with trying to get that timing in order so that when you eventually move out, the two of you might share a place. And the third factor that definitely plays into it is some people, in fact, I have a coworker who has done this, really have a strong desire to jump right into the housing market instead of renting whatsoever. So I have a coworker, for example, who saved up a mortgage, or rather a down payment for a mortgage, along with his wife over the course of 3 or 4 years living at home. And at the end of that, they paid that towards a down payment, and they went straight to buying a house together.
Yeah, that's a good answer, and I think everyone's of course, if you can save up, the whole point of staying at home is save up money, right? And then, I mean, in the end, everyone have to move out, or some people never do. I know people who never moves out, and usually girls are like. Majority of them are girls, but no, not to be offending anyone, but girls tends to stay at home a little bit longer than guys, just because the parents would likely more accepting, and that protectiveness comes into it. And the guys, sometimes we want our own careers, we're a little bit more adventurous, so we tends to move out a little bit early. But of course, at this time, saving up is the majority of the goals, right? If I mean that's if you're let's say you're on good terms with your parents, right? A lot of people are not in good terms with your parents, so that's not a good place to be. So, and you mentioned that your coworker saved up for a mortgage, and with his wife and living at home with his parents. Now, lots of people save up, and a lot of people also receive, like my friend who receives a little bit of help, because even nowadays with a job and some savings, and a mortgage, there's still going to be some gaps where like, okay, that's a little bit affordability issues there. So lots of time you need family to for the support. Now, this is a little bit personal, but like, would you be receiving some personal help, like family help from your parents, or is your girlfriend will be getting that?
Sorry, just to clarify, you mean current financial help in regards to, let's
Yes.
say, living expenses, or do you mean in the future if
In the
they were to
future,
move
so
out?
I'm saying in the future, like if you need a little bit of money of closing that gap of getting that home. Let's say you get a mortgage approved, you have a down payment, but there's still a little bit left of like few $10,000, $20,000 left to close that gap. Would you think your parents will chip in, or your girlfriend's parents will chip in?
That's the kind of thing that I think the both of us have definitely put off discussing with our parents until that kind of time comes, because obviously financial situations do change, and to a certain extent we don't want to put that pressure and make them kind of promise something that might become more strenuous down the line a year or so from now, especially with the potential recession looming, right?
Right.
But that possibility is definitely something that's more unspoken.
You're right.
And I'm sure, if either family has capability, I'm sure they would probably be willing.
Right. That's true. And I mean, I would say a good measurement, I won't say measurement, is that I think a lot of people, right? So as we progresses onwards with the current inflations and with the average salary and income not catching up to the inflation, we're seeing a lot of family support. And as our agents are discussing these issues in our brokerage, we understand that even the mortgage brokers are talking about this. It's like, yeah, you're gonna have like lots of people who receive family helps, and in terms of that, it's like, from your point of view, right? You talk about the uncertainty of the economy. So if you think like, if it's a person who doesn't receive any help from family, like just try to make it himself, like say with a bachelor's, with a master's, in today's economy, like how much pressure and how hopeless would that person be? What do you think?
Well, based on what I understand, a lot of people who are in that situation, they kind of end up becoming a part of that current movement, right? I know there's a lot of people now who don't even consider buying a home an option. I think there's a very large demographic that have kind of resigned themselves to renting for the rest of their life. And I do think that if you don't have financial support, I mean, we're looking at first-time home buyers who are maybe in their late 30s, early 40s, right? And with the way things are going, and, basically, you mentioned someone with a bachelor's degree, but this day and age, let's be honest, almost everyone has a bachelor's. I think here in Canada, it's something along the lines of, 70-80% of people past a certain age.
Yes.
So no, it's not much of an asset in this market. So I do think a lot of people will have to resign themselves to just renting if they don't have financial support.
Yeah, and that I feel like that's when I work with tenants and helping people try to find places to rent, I do feel that sense of hopelessness. It's like I have someone who's making that's like 50K per year, a little bit over 50K, and he's having trouble to afford a studio in Toronto. And I feel like, okay, that's maybe he wants to save money, maybe he's not receiving any help from family, but at the same time I just feel like or it's the lots of time is the financial decisions or how he managed money, but I just feel like it's when you're on your own, especially in Toronto, it's a little bit very hard for a young adult to feel that sense of hopeness. I think because the economy is very dependent on people's if they feel hopeful, then they will of course work, they will of course try to achieve their dream. If they feel hopeless, then they don't want to do anything, right? They just give up. And if people give up, then of course that's really bad for the economy, right? So, and now while we talk about the economy, what's if you were to move out with your girlfriends and girlfriend, would you where would you think would be a good place for you two to settle down?
Well, I'm going to be quite honest. You were talking about Toronto. And anyone with a salary around $50,000 at this point is going to have a lot of difficulty affording a studio, like you mentioned. And that's just because realistically, you'd have to spend more than half your after-tax income if you're at that kind of income range.
Yeah.
And realistically, if I have that ability, I would probably want to be a little bit further out from the GTA, or maybe further out, at least from Toronto, within the GTA, just to keep those prices at a reasonable level. But of course, it also depends on where I work. Personally, I'm not really interested in commuting more than 30 minutes, and depending on the job opportunities and where I can find them, that may have to change.
Right. And the thing about the Canadian housing market, people talk about Canadian housing market, but it really is just Toronto housing market versus the rest of the housing market, honestly. And Vancouver is really, really messy. I checked the Vancouver stats. Don't go to Vancouver. You know what's the highest rent a landlord asks for a 1-bedroom apartment? Take a guess.
Absolute highest.
Absolute highest.
In Vancouver, we're talking?
Yeah, recent highest. 1 bedroom.
A little hard to guess. Talking the highest and not the average, $4,000?
Close, $3,000. $3,000 for
It's an absurd price either way, but
it's absurd. Yeah, it is. And every I would say every city has a little bit set average. Even if it's moving up, it has a set average. But Vancouver just messed up. I try to find the average price for Vancouver. Everyone's throwing out price like crazy out there. But anyway, so when we're talking about Canadian housing market, I think a lot of people, I say Americans, or people who doesn't know Canada, they think about, Canadian housing market is fucked. But what really is Toronto housing market versus the rest of the Canadian housing market, because Toronto is the center of everything. We have 14 million people in Ontario alone, and we only have close to 40 million people in the entire country. So I mean, Ontario alone has more population than Quebec and BC combined. So, and most of Ontario people lives on around the Golden Horseshoe area, and that's the problem. So we're still having a housing shortage in our GTA and Golden Horseshoe area. And what do you think? What's your take? Of course, as a Zoomer, what's to Zoomers, what's our position on the current real estate market in say Ontario wise? What's your two takes on it?
Well, I mean, you're definitely getting increasing number of people in our generation who just have a roommate, not out of choice, but just out of necessity because it's too expensive otherwise. If they do need to live anywhere near the city, there's definitely been more micro apartments as well. Yeah. And I personally know some people who have resorted to simply moving further out, living in Oxbridge, for example, living 30, 40 minutes out of the city and making that commute into the city for work just to keep those prices relatively affordable.
Right, yeah. And so I'd like to close off this interview with just a final question of saying like, so of course we talk about the Canadian and the housing market and Toronto housing market, because how crazy really Toronto is center of everything in Canada. Now recently there's been a trend, and I talk with some of the friends, and they are also talking about it, and they're talking about the trend of young people, especially within the younger community, about moving to Calgary. It is a young people's trend, and then they think that city, Alberta, Edmonton, and like Calgary area is going to be the mass migration of young people. It's going to be the next growth area of young people. So what do you think on that one? It's like for Zoomers, do you think that's good, bad, or like should people be careful with this kind of trend? Or
that's a good question, actually, because I myself have considered going over to Alberta. So I have been kind of following that. And to some extent, I can see the appeal, because Alberta, first of all, does offer on average a bit of a higher salary for most occupations. It definitely offers a much lower cost of living, as much as 25 to 30% lower overall average between rent, food, and everything else. And it does have some reasonably sized cities. Not quite as large as Toronto, of course, but there are a few decent sized cities out there. Yeah. And one of the other major things that's been happening recently is Alberta actually, on average, does have one of the youngest populations in Canada. So it does have some of the most young people, just like you've recently mentioned. Perhaps part of that's due to this ingress. Part of it is due to just the nature of people who are living there for those industries. But actually, as a result, Alberta recently was talking about backing out of the Canadian pension plan, for example, just to kind of leverage the fact that they have that younger population.
Wow.
Meaning more people are working, meaning a better economy.
Right.
So I do think Alberta has a decent chance of kind of being that future for a lot of younger people who are not satisfied with this current situation in the GTA.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I think like my 2 cents of it is that of course economy is all about trending. It's all about like making people feel hopeful. If something makes people feels like hopeful, they will go ahead and do it. Like it's about motives, right? And at the same time, Alberta have to live up to that hype, and because if they don't, at the same time people will feel like they got a little bit scammed. It's depend. There are several factors that they kind of have to fix. Where I talk to people who live in BC, not in Alberta, but basically BC and Alberta is the same area because they're within 1 day of drive. Well, the only thing I think a few things they talk about is the concerns about it. Of course, it's the bad weather. Not everyone can take it. Second, I think his main concern that another of my friend mentioned when he lives in BC is that the Alberta healthcare is on the slower side. Due to the it's just the population, especially rural area Alberta, they don't believe in modern medicine for some reason. I guess it's a redneck thing. Who knows? But so they don't, because if people don't go to doctors don't have a job there, so they don't have doctors resource there. So now you have a problem of getting surgery or doctor appointment arranged. So there are several problems with like Alberta and what they need to fix, but I think it's very important that the other cities to step up to help Toronto to share some of that burden, because like the second and third largest city, Vancouver and Montreal combined together, is not as big as Toronto. That is a problem. Like we have too much of polarization in our economy and geographic distribution of populations. Right, so I think is on one side is that I think as a real estate agent, I need to warn people the potential risk of investments, but also the second part is I think it's very good that other cities are stepping up to take the burden off Toronto so that we can have a better overall national economy, right? So that's all for today, and I think we all enjoyed this interview, this talk, and I think this was a very meaningful conversation. I think we both provided values to our viewers and everyone who's interested in real estate. I think because young people nowadays are we're living in the shadows behind like under the previous generations, and I think it's time for us to gradually to take over and take our position in the economy and take what belongs to us. All right, so that's it for this episode, and see you guys later.